Barker, history's favorite outlaw mom. If there's one thing we know about the Wild West, it's that it wasn't just cowboys and sheriffs trading bullets. Nope. Sometimes it was a tough-as-nails woman who didn't need a badge or a pistol to make her mark. In this case, all she needed was a house full of criminal sons and the cunning to pull the strings behind one of the most notorious crime families in America. Buckle up, folks, because we're diving into the wild and woolly world of Ma Barker. Who was Ma Barker? Born Arizona Donnie Clark on October 8, 1873 in Ash Grove, Missouri, Ma Barker didn't exactly start life as a criminal mastermind. Her name might sound like she came out of an old western, but she was just a small-town girl at heart, at least in the beginning. She married George Barker, a man who was neither rich nor particularly ambitious. They settled into the kind of quiet life that might have led to an anonymous grave had they not decided to raise, well, 4 outlaws. Ma Barker's claim to fame comes from her legendary status as the mother and brains behind the Barker-Karpis Gang. If Bonnie and Clyde were the celebrity couple of the outlaw world, then Ma Barker was the family matriarch who turned crime into a full-on family business. And boy, did she run a tight ship. The Barker Boys, Raising Criminals, 101. Let's start with the kids, shall we? The Barker family was made up of 4 boys: Herman, Lloyd, Arthur, known as Doc, and Fred. If there was a handbook for raising criminals, Ma Barker probably wrote the first draft. From an early age, these boys were getting into all sorts of trouble. Petty crimes like stealing cars, robbing stores, and sticking up gas stations were just the warm-ups. And while their father, George, tried to distance himself from their antics, Ma Barker seemed to be right there, encouraging them, or at least not discouraging them. It didn't take long for the boys to graduate from small-time hoodlums to full-fledged outlaws, and Ma was allegedly more than happy to let them live in her home while they plotted their next move. Think of her as a supportive mom, but instead of cheering from the sidelines at a soccer game, she was hanging out in the kitchen while they divvied up stolen loot. But was Ma Barker really the criminal genius behind the gang? That's where things get tricky. The myth and the reality. Ma Barker has often been portrayed as the evil mastermind pulling all the strings, but the truth might be a little more complicated. Some historians believe she was more of an accomplice than an actual ringleader. In other words, while she wasn't the one planning every heist or jailbreak, she certainly didn't mind sitting back and letting her boys do their thing. Maybe she even cooked them a nice dinner afterward. Criminals need to eat too, right? Now, to be fair, the FBI painted Ma Barker as a criminal mastermind after her death, but that could have been a bit of good old-fashioned propaganda. J. Edgar Hoover, head of the FBI at the time, needed a villain, and who better than a gray-haired lady who looked like she should be knitting scarves, not orchestrating bank robberies? Was she the ruthless, cold-hearted matriarch the FBI wanted everyone to believe? Or was she just a mom who turned a blind eye to her son's bad choices? The answer probably lies somewhere in the middle. But regardless, she became one of the most infamous women in Wild West and American history. The Barker-Karpis Gang, Ma's criminal empire. At the height of their crime spree in the 1930s, the Barker-Karpis Gang was no joke. They specialized in bank robberies, kidnappings, and shootouts with law enforcement. But let's be real, the gang's success wasn't due to Ma Barker's brilliant tactical planning. Instead, that credit mostly goes to Alvin Karpis, the real brains of the operation. Karpis was a career criminal who teamed up with Fred Barker and quickly became Ma Barker's new favorite son. You know, the one who's actually useful when you need to bust open a bank vault. The gang pulled off some of the most notorious crimes of the era, including the kidnapping of wealthy businessmen like William Ham and Edward Bremer. If your last name was on a skyscraper or a fancy bottle of beer, These guys were coming for your ransom money. During this time, Ma Barker acted as the gang's den mother. She traveled around with them, from one safe house to another, providing a cozy cover for their operations. After all, who would suspect a sweet old lady of harboring a gang of violent criminals? She may not have been in on the planning, but she certainly wasn't complaining about the cash that rolled in. Life on the run. How the Barker-Karpis Gang stayed one step ahead. As the Barker-Karpis Gang racked up their criminal resume with robberies and kidnappings, life for Ma Barker and her boys became a constant game of cat and mouse with the law. But while the gang was notorious for their violent escapades, their real talent lay in their ability to disappear, slipping away from the authorities time and time again like outlaws in a game of high-stakes hide-and-seek. So how did they do it? First, let's give some credit where it's due. Ma Barker's maternal instincts might not have extended to law-abiding behavior, but when it came to protecting her boys, she was a master of logistics. The gang was always on the move, hopping from one safe house to another, never staying too long in one place. From remote cabins to secluded rental homes, they knew how to blend in, and having Ma along for the ride only made things easier. After all, who would suspect a little old lady and her sons of pulling off high-profile kidnappings? The Barker-Karpis Gang also had a knack for going underground, sometimes quite literally. They used secret compartments, hidden rooms, and even tunnels to evade capture. Alvin Karpis, the mastermind of the gang, was the one who ensured their operations were tight, but Ma Barker's presence added an extra layer of invisibility to their movements. Who'd think to knock on the door of a harmless-looking house where Grandma was baking pies? But make no mistake, they weren't just hiding out in these homes. They were hunkering down, planning their next moves. Their criminal hideouts became makeshift headquarters, where bank robberies were meticulously plotted, ransom notes were drafted, and getaway strategies were fine-tuned. And when the heat got too close, the gang would pack up and vanish without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a puzzled sheriff and some burnt toast. Despite their ability to evade the law, they couldn't hide forever. As the Barker-Karpis Gang's list of crimes grew longer, so did the FBI's determination to bring them down. The more audacious their crimes, the tighter the noose became. But for a while, Ma and her boys were practically untouchable, ghosts in the wind, staying one step ahead of the law, with Ma Barker always watching their backs. The fall of Ma Barker. Like all good crime stories, Ma Barker's reign didn't last forever. In 1935, the gang was on the run after a string of high-profile heists and kidnappings. They retreated to a hideout in Ocklawaha, Florida, hoping to lay low. But the FBI was hot on their trail, and in typical outlaw fashion, things were about to end in a blaze of bullets. On January 16, 1935, the FBI tracked Ma Barker and her son Fred to their Florida hideout. What followed was a 4-hour shootout that left both Ma and Fred dead. According to the FBI, Ma Barker went down with a gun in her hand, defending her criminal empire until the bitter end. But there's some skepticism about whether she was actually armed, or if the FBI just needed to justify taking out an elderly woman. J. Edgar Hoover wasted no time turning Ma Barker into the poster child for bad mothers everywhere. According to him, she was the ultimate puppet master, responsible for her son's descent into crime. Whether or not that's true is still up for debate. But one thing's for sure, she had a front-row seat to one of the wildest crime sprees in American history. Legacy of an outlaw matriarch. Ma Barker's death didn't mark the end of her story. It was only the beginning of her legend. Over the years, she's been immortalized in movies, TV shows, and books. Sometimes she's portrayed as the cold-hearted leader of a gang of vicious criminals, and other times she's just a doting mother who happened to raise a pack of delinquents. But here's the real question. Was Ma Barker truly a criminal mastermind? Or was she simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, surrounded by the wrong people? In the end, does it even matter? Her name has become synonymous with the dark side of the American dream. The idea that you can achieve anything, even infamy, if you're willing to break enough laws and dodge enough bullets. Ma Barker's place in Wild West infamy. So, was Ma Barker a master criminal or just an accessory to her son's bad decisions? Either way, she's earned her place in the annals of Wild West history. Her story reminds us that outlaws come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with the gun. It's the one with the kitchen apron, keeping a watchful eye on the chaos around her. And that's all for today's story, folks. If you enjoyed learning about Ma Barker and her outlaw empire, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more wild tales from the West.